Well, good afternoon. Today is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. As a father of 4 beautiful girls, this is an issue that is extremely close to my heart. It's hard to think of a more important issue, a more brutal crime. The criminals behind human trafficking, they're the worst of the worst. They prey on the young vulnerable. As Premier, I have made it my mission to fight these terrible criminals. And today, our government is taking further action against this despicable crime. The legislation builds on the $307 million investment in our anti-human trafficking strategy and will help raise awareness, protect victims, support survivors, and hold offenders accountable. This legislation is the first of its kind in Canada, and it is desperately needed here in Ontario. Our province has become a hub for human trafficking with the most police-reported incidents in the entire country. We will not allow this to continue here in Ontario. This new bill proposes to strengthen the ability of children's aid societies and law enforcement to protect exploited children in many new ways. It supports more survivors and the people who support them in obtaining restraining orders against traffickers, with specific consideration for Indigenous survivors. It increases penalties for traffickers who interfere with a child in the care of Children's Aid Society, and clarifies how police services can access information from hotel guest registries. The ministers will provide more details in a moment. I want to acknowledge the incredible organizations supporting victims and survivors. I had the opportunity to hear from some of these groups at a roundtable meeting last week. I want to thank them for their honesty and guidance. You are the true heroes on the front lines of this fight. We heard from a number of brave survivors who shared their stories. And we will continue to work closely with all stakeholders to make sure these resources get where they are needed most. This will be an ongoing effort. We must be vigilant and collaborative. My all-star ministers here know this is a top priority, but we can't do it alone. We will ask the federal government to step up and do more to strengthen law enforcement and ensure offenders of this horrible crime are punished to the full extent of the law. We're going to keep up the fight to protect our kids, and we won't rest until every child, every vulnerable person, every victim in Ontario can live free from violence and abuse. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to the Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Premier, and good afternoon. COVID-19 has placed an enormous strain on all Ontarians and put our normal lives on hold. But we know that crime is not taking a break, and human traffickers continue to prey on the most vulnerable in our communities. As the Premier said, the majority of police-reported incidents of human trafficking in the country happen right here in Ontario. And those are only the offences that we are aware of. This is why it is important that Ontario is equipped to fight this growing crime and support victims and survivors with every tool at our disposal. And this includes effective legislation that sends a strong message that this crime won't be tolerated in our communities. To support a sustained, long-term, and comprehensive response to human trafficking, our proposed new Combating Human Trafficking Act would strengthen the ability of children's aid societies and law enforcement to protect exploited children, support more survivors and the people who support them in obtaining restraining orders against traffickers, and provide law enforcement with more tools to locate victims and crack down on traffickers. Fighting human trafficking takes cooperation and collaboration across sectors. Children, youth, families, and communities in every part of Ontario are depending on this collaborative effort to end this crime in Ontario. The Ministry of the Solicitor General and the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services are just two of the frontline ministries in this fight against this crime. Under the Premier's leadership, we are drawing on support from across government. Today's announcement is a major step forward and builds on the action that we have already deployed to fight the increasingly sophisticated criminal networks that perpetrate human trafficking crimes across Ontario. For instance, we have ramped up intelligence efforts of police services related to the identification and interception of human trafficking activity. And we have made strides in detecting and monitoring these traffickers within the correctional system. And very critically, we have also expanded the Ontario Provincial Police Child Sexual Exploitation Unit. I can't think of a better way to recognize Human Trafficking Awareness Day than by adding new tools to the fight. Everyone deserves freedom from exploitation, fear, and violence, and our government won't rest until traffickers are off our streets. Thank you. I will now pass it over to Minister Dunlop.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Solicitor General Jones. Tragically, human trafficking has become a growing threat to women, children, and other vulnerable people around the world, a threat that we are also facing on a daily basis here in Ontario. Today on Human Trafficking Awareness Day, it is important to let victims and survivors know they are not alone. Our government stands with them, stands for them, and is continuously working to hold those who commit this crime accountable. Our government has been absolutely clear. This despicable crime is completely unacceptable, and we are going to do whatever we can to protect our children and youth from this, as well as provide the supports victims and survivors need to heal. Since launching our strategy last March, we have moved forward and are taking strong action against human trafficking. We are enhancing specialized services for victims through victim service agencies, reinvesting cash and proceeds seized from criminals to help fight human trafficking, supporting anti-human trafficking projects delivered by community police services, releasing new awareness and education tools for children, youth, and Indigenous communities, and investing in new community-based supports across Ontario to help more victims and survivors. Today, as the next step in the delivery of our strategy, we've introduced new and amended legislation to help victims and survivors better protect children and youth and strengthen our actions to fight this crime. This legislation includes changes that, if passed, would be the first of its kind in Canada, solidifying Ontario as a leader in anti-human trafficking efforts in the country. It also speaks to the need to work across all sectors. While this legislation was introduced by the Solicitor General, it includes input from our Tourism Minister, Lisa MacLeod, and our Attorney General, Doug Downey, as well as my ministry. However, Ontario can't do this work alone. We need all levels of government and all jurisdictions across the country to come together and fight against this disgusting crime. This legislation is the result of engagements with a wide range of stakeholders to create legislative tools that augment our strategy and support our efforts to stop this crime. It is another tool in our toolbox to further our work in combating human trafficking. While we know there is a long road ahead in our work to fight human trafficking, today we have taken an important step that will make a difference, especially in the lives of survivors, children, youth, and those who are dedicated to keeping them safe. Thank you.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. First question, please.
From Sean Jeffords at the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Sean.
Good afternoon, everyone. Premier Ford, I have a question today about the vaccine rollout. We understand that the province will be depending on the 34 local health units to have their own specific vaccine rollout plans. I'm wondering, in light of that, what the province is going to do to ensure that all of the regions are moving at roughly the same rate when it comes to the vaccine deployment, and what it will do to ensure equitable access to the vaccine is provided across the province in light of all these unique plans.
The best person to answer that is the Solicitor General.
Well, thanks for the question, Sean. You know, we are ensuring through our vaccine distribution that The people most closely to their communities, the public health units, are making the decisions on what is the fastest and easiest and most equitable way to ensure that people get the vaccines they need. It's why we've empowered 34 public health units to do that, and we've ensured by doing a distribution based on population that as a larger public health unit comes online and needs the vaccines, we distribute it from the province based on population. So that distribution will happen very equitably, and we are confident that those 34 public health units are reacting and responding to the needs in their local communities. Thank you.
Follow-up?
Yes, Premier, we've seen some reports over the course of the rollout of the vaccine that some shots have been going to healthcare workers who weren't patient-facing. We've seen that again over the weekend, some reports out of Brantford that some hospital workers there who weren't patient-facing were getting the shots. So does the province need to step in and ensure that health units and hospitals are giving these shots to priority communities and seniors first, and do even more than just sort of outline them in its framework?
Yeah, good question, Sean. And I've heard this happened a couple days back, and they have to follow the guidelines, the public health units, the testing. I mean the vaccination centers. And what happens? And this has happened in the past too. They schedule an appointment. Some people don't show up. They don't want to leave an empty seat there, so they fill it with a frontline healthcare worker. That's really what's happening. But vast majority is following the protocols. And again, I apologize, but I'm going to hand this over to the Solicitor General. She's taking care of the rollout there.
So as the Premier referenced, we want to make sure that every single dose that comes out of those vials are used. And if there is an opportunity or a time when either someone doesn't show up for their appointment or they're near the end of the shift and they have 1 or 2 doses left, we want to make sure they're not wasted. Having said that, the guidelines and the priority framework is very clear. We want to make sure that our most seniors get the vaccine first, and then after that, we go into the priority populations like healthcare workers who are working on the front line with COVID-positive patients. Thank you.
Next question.
From Colin DeMello at CTV News. Please go ahead.
How you doing, Colin?
Hi, good afternoon. Questions on the vaccines as well. For you, Premier, I'm wondering why you wouldn't want the province to kind of dictate from the top down exactly how this entire vaccine rollout goes, because that would mean consistency right across the province and everyone knows where to go to get their information as opposed to having to contact local public health units. Wouldn't that make sense from your perspective to have consistency across the board and all of that direction coming from the province itself?
Yeah, good point, Colin. But the consistency is with the guidelines, as the Solicitor General just mentioned. The people that know their communities the best are the public health units. They're working in collaboration, at least the ones I've been to, working in collaboration with the local city, the public health units, also the local hospitals that are sending volunteers in there to get testing done. But I hear what you're talking about, and I'm sure, after all this is said and done, we'll look at all 34 public health units. I always believe in standardization, consistency, and I always believe best governance on any board is 7 to 9 people. I'm not throwing out those numbers. I'm just saying that we need consistency. So I'll pass it back to the Solicitor General.
So to be clear, the 34 public health units that operate across Ontario are not new organizations. They have historic data on their community, on the individuals and the neighborhoods within those public health units that are more at risk. So we're capitalizing on that historic data, and we're empowering professionals to make decisions based on priority guidelines that have been carefully reviewed and prepared and provided to them from the province of Ontario. We want to get the vaccine out quickly, but we also want to make sure that the individuals, the organizations that know their communities, that know which pharmacies to work with, that know the hospitals to work with, the primary care physicians, we empower them to do that work. Thank you.
Follow-up?
Thank you. And back to you, Premier. So my understanding is that the province is responsible for distributing the vaccine and creating the guidelines for how that vaccine will be administered to people, while it's the local public health units who are involved in creating their own plan, contacting people, and administering the vaccine. It seems to me like they're doing all the heavy lifting here, while the province might be taking a bit of the credit for it. So what specifically is the general, who's being paid $20,000 a month, doing? What specifically is his team really responsible for if they're not creating the plan for how this will be administered?
By no means is anyone taking a light load on this call, no matter if it's the administration, if it's General Hillier, he's going around the clock, public health units, everyone is working collaboratively together. Nothing moves without the cooperation and collaboration of basically, honestly, three levels of government, PHUs, hospitals. Everyone are working together and putting needles into people's arms. That's where the PHUs are going to come into play. But again, we're working side by side, shoulder to shoulder, supporting each other every way we can.
Next question.
From Mike Crawley at CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Premier. There's a government document that says that there were negotiations going on for months last year with a purchaser for the Dominion Foundry lands in the West Don Lands. Why would the government not put out a public call for proposals for developing this land to try to get the best value for taxpayers?
Yeah, good question, Mike. Those are provincial held lands, and I know the deal has not been signed 100% yet, so it's not done until people sign on the dotted line. Our goal is to make sure that we have 1,000 affordable units there for the people of Toronto. We're in desperate need of affordable housing, but that process is still moving forward.
Follow-up?
But Premier, why would you specifically negotiate with one particular developer and not be more transparent and offer it up to the development community?
Again, I can't disclose all the details of this deal. Once that deal is signed, we'd be more than happy to be transparent, 100% transparent, but until that deal is signed, it would be confidential. And I'm focusing on a couple areas when we sell lands: affordable housing, 17,000 square feet of community space that's going to be produced here in Toronto, which we're in desperate need of, and always working in collaboration with the municipalities to see what their needs are. And the needs of Toronto: more housing and community space. And I think we've filled those two categories.
Last question.
From Tina Yazdani at City News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, thank you for taking my questions. Premier, today your government voted against a motion to give personal support workers a pay raise. You refused to legislate paid sick days, but at the same time, your government has invested millions of dollars for a tech company to develop wristbands that beep when people are less than 6 feet apart. Frankly, a lot of people are calling this a complete waste of money. So how do you respond to that, and do you think this was a wise investment?
Well, I always, we look deep into anything that we invest in attracting jobs, and I think so far, over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, anything that we've invested has created a tremendous amount of jobs going regarding the PSWs. For 15 years, they weren't getting anything from the previous government. We stepped up, gave them $3 an hour increase, and I support them. I support keeping that as we move forward. But to say that, we don't have sick pay again, here we go. Like, I don't know how many times I have to repeat it. I'll repeat it for the 100th time. The taxpayers out there, I ask you this question: would you want the federal and provincial government to double dip into your pockets when there's a program already all the way back from September? I fought to get $1.1 billion for sick pay. So far in the entire country, they've given $319 million. So I asked them to change the program. They listened to us. The Minister of Labour asked them to change. They listened to us. And I'm very, very grateful to the federal government for actually changing the program, enhancing the program, and lengthening the program from 2 weeks now up to 4 weeks. So again, I think it's great. The federal government did it. I want to thank them once again, and we're in much better shape than we were before.
Follow up?
Just to follow up on that, I guess, do you think that $2.5 million right now is a good investment to make in something that people didn't ask for, that people are calling a waste of money, and wristbands that beep when people aren't 6 feet apart? I think most people know to keep that space at this point. I just want to get your response to the wristband specifically.
Yeah, we always look at that at risk on any investment that we do and the return on investment. And they came back and said, here's a good return on investment. And you just don't look, where you are in a couple of weeks. You have to look at the long-term investment. And we felt like it was a good investment, so we moved forward on it.
Last question.
From Janice Dixon at the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, Janice.
Hi, I'm wondering about the regulation back to human trafficking that requires related sectors to collect and disclose non-personal information. What information are you hoping these businesses disclose, and how will the government use it?
Well, Minister Dunlop, I'll hand it to you, and then over to Soljan.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question, Janice, and it was a pleasure to speak with you the other day. Today is Anti-Human Trafficking Awareness Day, and we were very excited to announce the legislation, the work that we're doing moving forward across ministries. And I will pass it over to the Solicitor General to speak specifically to the hotel regulations and the work that they will be doing directly with the police.
Thank you, Minister Dunlop. So, like every problem, if we don't collect the data, then it's really hard for us to build the policies and the procedural changes that we want to ensure we better protect people who have been captured in the human trafficking trade. And so by collecting this data, we will be able to find out things like, are we training educators sufficiently? Do police officers have the accurate information in terms of being able to know the signs and understand what it looks like when someone is being lured in or is in fact in the human trafficking trade? So all of this data together, and I will reinforce, it is non-personal, so we will aggregate it away from individuals, but it starts to drive the conversation about, do we have to focus more on Indigenous youth? Are certain racialized communities more at risk? Are certain parts of the Ontario population, based on where you live, more at risk? All of those data points will help us drive good regulation and ultimately safer communities. Thank you.
Follow up?
Yeah, and my next question is for Minister Dunlop. On the changes to the Youth Family Services Act, it says a change would allow child protection workers to remove 16 and 17-year-old victims of sex trafficking to another location if they are being trafficked in their protection. And I'm just curious why workers wouldn't already have this ability.
Well, currently, right now, 16 and 17-year-olds can give consent. So what we are looking to do is to change that so that child protection workers can remove 16 and 17-year-olds to safe situations, and these will only be used in circumstances where we understand that it is immediate that they be removed from that situation, to ensure that they're connected with community supports. To we have to remember that these victims have been trafficked as early as the average age of 13, so they've been manipulated to think that there aren't supports there for them. So it's to act quickly to remove them and ensure that they have the supports available to them.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.